part of the process that you didn't get to see in class. So this is the printing process. So I'm going to put down a thin layer of glue. You can also use hairspray if you have it. Run a self-test, which is what I'm going to do. Not required, but I found that works pretty good. And what's going to happen is when we put our part in there, it's going to push more sand out to the edge, which is fine. We don't want any cracks or crevices where aluminum can move into and get out, because once it finds a way out, it'll continue to go out. Now you can use baby powder, pat in there if you're worried about wasting the talcum powder. We want to make sure that is spread all over so the kinetic sand doesn't grip to itself, to other pieces of kinetic sand. I'm going to put it right in the center. So we want this fairly far down from the top to reduce the chance of shrinkage. I have compensated for the shrinkage with the 3D print, making it larger. And I did that through just trial and error. And I'm just going to tamp that down one more time so all of that kind of stays in place. Powder for the next layer of sand that's about to go on, same thing on the part, so that my kinetic sand doesn't stick. You do the same thing for Petrobond. Place this up. All right, good. Okay, so I'm going to press that in with all my weight. I'm going to take my sprue, kind of move it around a little bit. And what that's doing is just making sure I'm packing down any of that kinetic sand. You see how it just kind of pours out? It's not as good as Petrobond in that case. Some of this material out, because I don't want to take the chance of it falling down into the part and creating issues, bumps and crevices inside the part. You'll want to place it on top of it so you don't have to move it around too much. All right, good. Let me move that out of the way. Because like I said, this kinetic sand will move on you. All right, there's our two halves. So I'm going to take that out. You can take hairspray and spray on there, because now we don't worry as much about the two halves sticking together. We actually want them to stay together. We're going to pick this up, make sure it doesn't slide out on you. We're going to place those back together, nice and easy. We don't get any deformation. Press them back together again. And now, before we do anything else, we're going to tie this together with wire. All right, so now that I've got that, I can turn that upside down, and any little flakes I want to get out because they can cause damage to my part. All right, that looks good. All right, I think we can get a good pour out of that. All right, that roar that I'm turning down is the gas furnace. Whatever was on that aluminum when I melted it, that was trash. I'm just going to skim that off. All right. There we go. Let me get over here. And this one is a large part. All right, so we need quite a bit of aluminum to go in there. Now this, we're gonna have to let cool down longer because it's gonna stay hot longer. It's gonna be hot, but it shouldn't be as hot as the lost PLA one. Oh, that stayed in there. All right, there's our part. So it turned out pretty good, but you can see because it cooled so fast, it looks really grainy. We can sand that off, which we're gonna have to sand off some of it because we're gonna have little pieces of sand that might have fallen down in there. And we'll clean that off. We'll cut it off at the sprue. See how that is shimmering and shaking still? It's still not solidified, but we'll get less shrinkage off of that because it's going to be a slower cooling process. So we got to let this one cool, mainly because our mold was still super hot. So it was probably 500-600 degrees, still below the melting point of aluminum, but it's taking longer to cool. But the sand, for the sand casted part, that wasn't the case. It immediately cooled down quick. In here. All right, see how that's still glowing? That tells you how hot that aluminum is just by shielding a little bit of that light. So lost PLA, slower cooling process.